But Flight 447's pilots may have found themselves in totally unknown territory.
If they were in a condition that it fully stalled, oftentimes when the nose breaks, they'll roll off on a wing, and that's a pretty aggressive maneuver when the airplane does that.
If one wing stalls before the other, the aircraft rolls violently to one side, more like a fighter jet than a passenger airliner. To recover from this stall, the Flight 447 pilot would require highly specialized skills. This is the National Aerospace Training and Research Center in Pennsylvania. At the controls of his advanced simulator is Colonel Paul Comtois, a former U.S. Air Force F-16 fighter pilot. He believes that taking an aircraft to the extremes is a skill that only comes from direct experience.
We don't fly around autopilot a lot. We have a lot of, hands-on stick time. Not only does it give you the experience to fly in that extreme maneuvering envelope, it gives you the confidence to be able to do it as well.
The simulator has the cockpit controls of a passenger airliner. But unlike conventional simulators, it moves like a fighter jet, spinning on 3 axes to take pilots to the limits of human physiology.
You learn not to believe your body, because your body will lie to you.
Comtois is flying in the dark, with no visual cues from the outside world. Instead, he must rely on his instruments.
I have flown on missions where I felt like I was in 120 degrees of bank, but I'm looking at that gauge and it's telling me I'm flying straight and level.
Instructor Glenn King is about to trigger a violent maneuver, like the stall that may have hit Flight 447.
Here comes a very high 4-degree pitch up, 50-degree pitch up attitude. The aircraft is rolling.
The simulator sends Comtois into a head-spinning roll at 35,000 feet.
You gotta unstall the airplane. The nose must go down.
He has to get the air flowing over his wings by ignoring his own senses and trusting the instruments.
It's a mental battle, because yes, I am flying on that gauge, but man, I don't feel right.
He's regaining control, but the ground is coming up fast.
I've got to be very careful for how much I pull back on that stick.
The danger? He might stall again as he tries to pull up.
Okay, you started his recovery. You can hear the buffeting now from the plane being loaded.
You can see how fast it is.
The aircraft's running a G-load, starting to load up the G's. The airspeed's very high. Damn. Recover and fall. That's a lot of altitude. And he's flying again.
Comtois finally recovers control, but despite years of jet fighter experience, the Air Force colonel lost 19,000 feet, more than half his altitude in just 45 seconds. Most airline pilots have no such experience, and autopilot means they do little hands-on flying. For Tony Cable, the case of Flight 447 highlights critical training issues.
It has raised the question about whether the situation is actually being made worse by the increase in automation, whereby crews don't get a great deal of opportunity to manually fly the aircraft.
Paul Comtois agrees.
The more we automate, the more we need to get back to the basics of flying. You know, when I'm flying that fighter to the edges, I am physically hands-on the stick and throttle.
Standard airline flight simulators don't have the freedom of movement to recreate extreme maneuvers.
Stalling is not something actually that's taught to transport category aeroplane pilots. We've gone from pilots who've had experience of some of the more extreme maneuvers to pilots who very rarely see them.